on the hotline is the former NFL MVP, now doing a great job in the media world with the NFL Today on CBS, and you could also hear him on the radio with WFAN and Westwood 1, and that's Boomer Esiason. Boomer, what's happening, my man?
Not too much, Zach. Thanks for having me on, as always.
Well, I could tell you something, and thank you for coming on. I'm not doing great today, and I know you're not doing great today because I made that schlep to Madison Square Garden last night, and I know my audience probably enjoys when the Rangers lose, but that was just one embarrassing performance by the Rangers last night, Boomer.
Well, it was certainly embarrassing. I mean, the thing about hockey is you got to have passion, and there's got to be a will. And right now, the will of the Penguins is so much stronger than the Rangers, especially last night. The previous three games, Zach, in my estimation, were pretty evenly played. It just came down to a mistake here or there, and the Penguins capitalized on it. You got to love what Mike Sullivan, the coach of the Penguins, is doing. You know, he's a Tortorella protege. He's got his team, especially the low-level guys on his team, the money guys, blocking shots, making plays. And when Matt Cullen or Connor Sheary is scoring goals against your higher-paid team, then you know the will is there on the side of the Penguins. It has not been there overall on the side of the Rangers. So a series is never won until one team has won 4 games, and we've been down this road before as Ranger fans, where the Rangers look completely out of it, and then all of a sudden somehow turn on. However, I don't necessarily know that that is the makeup of this particular club. This has been a long run of success for the Rangers, even though it has not concluded with a Stanley Cup. It's a very likable team to root for. It's a team that you really appreciate. But at the end of the day, you know, if Malkin and Crosby and Kessel and, you know, their top stars are going to be performing and our top stars are not going to be scoring goals, then it's going to be a very difficult road for the New York Rangers to climb out of now.
Yeah, unfortunately, I know they came back the last 2 years down 3-1 to the Penguins and the Capitals, but I don't see it happening this time around. And I also don't see the Flyers coming back, although they were able to get that Game 4 victory at the Wells Fargo Center as Boomer Esiason joins us. So the big story here in Philadelphia has been the trade the Eagles made with the Browns to move up to number 2 in the NFL draft. When you saw the Birds make that move, what was your first reaction?
I said, wow, that's pretty aggressive. And the thing that I do appreciate, believe it or not, from where I sit, is watching a general manager, Howie Roseman, be completely transparent about the whole thing. There was no guessing game. There was no, well, we're doing it for this. I mean, he basically told you why they were doing it and what they believe in. And quite frankly, the only reason I think they would do it is because they know Jared Goff is going to be there. That's what I believe. I think Carson Wentz is going to the Rams. I could be wrong, but my feeling is that Wentz is going there, and then that Goff became available at the second pick. And if you're in love with a guy, and that's the guy that you really, really want, then you go and get him. And in this day and age of quarterback-driven league, you have to find somebody that you think is going to be a long-term solution. The unique thing about all of this, that if I were in Sam Bradford's shoes, I'd be really definitely perturbed. Even though I'm making $33 million, and there's still the human aspect of this, the human side of it, if you take the money out of it. And basically they're saying to Sam Bradford, you're not really the long-term future for us. You may be the immediate future, and that's why we're paying you. But at the end of the day, it looks that if one of these guys turns out to be a legitimate star, hopefully Goff or Wentz does, then the Philadelphia Eagles will have a trading chip on their hands with Sam Bradford next year. But it's weird. There's no question about it, Zach, but it is certainly a very aggressive and bold move. And as Howie Roseman said, you're not going to acquire anything that you really, truly want unless you go after it. And obviously they have their sights set, I believe, on Jared Goff.
And that's the interesting part of this whole thing. They already invested so much money into the quarterback position for at least a year to 3 years because Bradford has a 2-year deal. And then we also have to remember Chase Daniel is here on a 3-year deal. So if they do select a quarterback, I don't see them keeping all 3 of those quarterbacks. So it would make sense, Boomer, that they try to shop around Sam Bradford. And I would assume that Bradford doesn't even want to be here anymore with after these moves the way they went down. But at the end of the day, he's still making $17 million.
Well, the one thing about drafting a quarterback up high in the first round, too, remember you also have the back-end insurance of a 5th year on their contract. So, 5 years is a long, long time in the NFL, and a lot of things can happen. And I do know, some of the coaches there in Philadelphia. My former college roommate is their offensive coordinator, Frank Reich. He's worked with Phillip Rivers. He's worked with, Peyton Manning. I know DiFilippo has worked with Derek Carr, and of course, Doug Peterson himself was a former quarterback, and being around Donovan McNabb. So they all understand the importance of the position, and I'm sure all 3 of those guys want to get their hands on somebody who's been not tainted, I should say, by the NFL experience. And when you also have to worry about, in the case of Sam Bradford, the injury factor. I really thought last year, at the beginning of the year, in Chip Kelly's system, he was going to take off and he was going to flourish. And of course, he got injured again, and then he didn't really start playing well until late in the season. I would have liked to have seen him go through another year with Chip's offense, but Philadelphia decided that's enough is enough, and we got to get it back on track here. And the way you do that with Zach is by getting the quarterback that you believe is going to be your 10 to 14-year guy, and hopefully build around him, and hopefully that will work out for them.
And I'm sure it's going to vacillate from now to the draft and everyone's mock drafts, and there's going to be all these rumors, hey, Wentz is going one, then Goff is going one. But you said that the Eagles are really looking at Goff. Everything we've been hearing is they have really been paying attention to Carson Wentz, and that's the guy that they want. And a lot of the mock drafts now have Goff at number one. But just give me your scouting report as we sit here today, a little under a week from the draft, on both Goff and Wentz, some things you like and then some things that you don't like with these two quarterbacks.
Well, here's the thing. Goff is your standard 6'4", 215-pound guy. That's right in the sweet spot in terms of size and weight and everything else. And he's also a guy who has gotten progressively better at a major college. And each year you can see that he has gotten better. That's one of the reasons why, if you were asking me who I would pick, number one, it would be Jared Goff. That would be the guy, simply because of the things that I just told you about. And, in a couple of years, he'll be 230 pounds. He'll be 6'4", and he'll be absolutely perfect size-wise. And he seems like a bright kid. And he stayed at California, got better each and every year. So that's always something that you look at. And on the other side, when you look at Carson Wentz, okay, North Dakota State, small school. But when you watch his highlights, I didn't see any of his games. I've only seen his highlights. I've only seen snippets of his pro day, the combine. And you listen to all the different people, waxing poetic on him. He's as big as Ben Roethlisberger is. He does have some movement to his game. I just don't know if it will translate the way Ben's movement translated to the NFL. Ben played at Miami of Ohio, so it's not out of the realm of possibility that somebody like Carson Wentz could go out there and really be an extremely impressive player. So my thing is that I believe the Eagles know who the Rams want, and all of this stuff may be leading to the draft and the NFL telling these teams, look, don't be openly talking about who you're going to be signing. We all know it's one of the two. Let's keep everybody guessing. But when the Rams made their trade, I thought, and I still believe, that they want Wentz. Now, they could be playing games with Philadelphia now, trying to, get Philadelphia to think, maybe they have to make a trade to get the first pick or something. I don't know. That's the way it works in the NFL. But I still think it's going to be Wentz, and then I think it's going to be Goff, and I think the Eagles would be ecstatic if that were the case.
Okay, so sounds good as we're talking to Boomer Esiason. So with that whole thing being said, with all the games that go on leading up to the NFL draft and the amount of rumors that do circulate, why do you think the Eagles didn't elect to wait to at least see who the Rams would pick in that number one spot before they struck the deal with the Browns?
Because I believe they know who's going to be there. I think they know who the Rams are picking. The interesting thing is could this be a whole ruse by the Rams to get the Eagles to do what they're doing? I don't believe so. I don't believe it works that way. I think that's that's a conspiracy theorist's way of thinking. I think the Rams know who they want. That's why they went up and got him. And listening to Stan Kroenke talk about this, he's talking about how Les Snead and Jeff Fisher over the last couple of years have drafted the defensive rookie of the year in Aaron Donald. They drafted the rookie of the year in their running back last year. So they know what they're doing in St. Louis, out of LA now, I should say. And that's why I think that they targeted the guy all along. And because these worlds are so kind of intertwined, and it really is a small world within the NFL, that the Eagles know exactly what the Rams are doing. And that's why you would make the trade, because you know the guy that you really ultimately covet is going to be there at number two. And there also could be a possibility here, too, that, the last thing you want to do is allow the Dallas Cowboys to draft somebody that you think is going to be a long-term solution for your own football team. And with the Cowboys drafting number 4 right now, that probably was a little bit too close for comfort when it came to the Eagles. So Howie Roseman, bold stroke. He's either going to go down in history as one of the great trades of all time, or it's going to be one of the biggest busts of all time. But you got to give him credit for being aggressive. You got to give him credit for, I think, being transparent, telling you exactly what he's thinking.
Well, let me throw one more theory out around you, and this one that has been talked about in Philadelphia. You all knew that it was a contentious relationship between Chip Kelly and Howie Roseman. Chip went for the power play, won it. Howie Roseman had to move his office, and then Howie's back in power. We know that they're erasing every existence of Chip Kelly at the NovaCare facility as they got rid of DeMarco Murray. They made a good trade and still got rid of Byron Maxwell and Kiko Alonso. Sam Bradford, who was a Chip Kelly guy, may now be out the door. And also, if you look back at last year's draft, Chip did all he could to try to bring in a Marcus Mariota, and now Howie Roseman goes out there and makes a move for the quarterback. In the back of Howie's mind, and I know teams don't operate this way, is he out all making some of these moves in spite of Chip Kelly a little bit?
I think anytime normally when somebody comes in and takes over for somebody that was previously there, they're going to do things completely different. That's normally the way it's done in the NFL. Now, two unique situations have occurred here in the NFC East. First and foremost, Tom Coughlin was fired out by the Giants, and his offensive coordinator takes over, and he's still hanging around the facility, which is kind of weird. So that's one unique situation where I don't think they'll really do that much different from what Tom was doing. I think they just are younger. They're going to be more aggressive as head coach, and everything about Ben McAdoo is great. Now, on the other side in Philadelphia, because of the contentious nature of what it sounds like went on there, and because of the bold strokes by Chip Kelly, in order to undo those things, you have to be bold yourself. And that's exactly what Howie Roseman is doing. I think he's basically taken the proverbial bull by the horns and saying, look, this is my team now. These are my decisions. This is what I'm doing. And again, part of me really takes my hat off to him and says, you know what? Good for him. He's doing what I would probably do. I'd want to basically put my mark on this football team. And the best way to do that is by having the quarterback choices that it looks like he's going to have here moving forward. I don't think any of us think that Chase Daniel has a chance to be the starting quarterback there unless Howie's not done yet. And, is there a chance on draft day or prior to draft day that somebody may want to come and sign Sam Bradford? I don't know who that team would be. I don't know why anybody would want to take that contract, but, stranger things have happened in the world of the NFL. So maybe he's not done yet. Maybe he continues to tweak that roster, and he'll try to get it right here before too long.
Howie's first big move was hiring a head coach, and he lands Doug Peterson, who's a disciple of Andy Reid, and you know how much success Andy had here in Philadelphia. Are you a fan of Doug Peterson?
Well, I'm certainly a fan of his coaching staff. I know that. I don't know Doug personally. Sometimes you hire where you once came from, and you hire the people that you're really comfortable with. And first and foremost, Jeffrey Lurie's got to sign off on all that. So don't think for one moment that the owner is not involved. The owner is involved. The owner is listening to Howie. Howie's telling him this is what I want to do. I know that Doug, from his time in Philadelphia, has looked on favorably, especially with the way that he handled Donovan McNabb and all of that other stuff. And they had a lot of great success under Andy Reid. I know he didn't win a Super Bowl there, and I know, much like we are as Ranger fans, we have not won a Stanley Cup with this current group of players. But that doesn't mean we can't appreciate the greatness that
Agreed.
they've actually shown over the last 5 years. So that's why you would go back and get a Doug Peterson. They know him better than anybody in this league, maybe with the exception of what's going on in Kansas City. So why not go hire somebody that you're comfortable with? The one thing I do know about Doug and Frank Reich and John DeFilippo, these are smart guys. These are guys that have had success throughout the NFL with different teams, with different players. They're smart offensive guys. And I know with the addition of Jim Schwartz there as the defensive coordinator, you really do have a top-notch supporting cast for Doug Peterson, who's entering into his first year as a head coach. So, there's a lot of good things that are happening. I mean, they're happening rapid. They're happening with bold strokes. So normally that's going to garner a lot of, I don't want to say criticism, but at least opinion towards what they're doing. So I can't wait for draft day. I can't wait to see what happens. And certainly I think I can't wait until the season starts because, boy, I'll tell you what, the changes in the NFC East alone with two major rivals is going to be fun to watch.
Wrapping up with Boomer Esiason, a few more questions with the former NFL MVP. Now does a great job with the NFL Today on CBS and WFAN. Just like in New York, every Jets fan is waiting to see what happens to Muhammad Wilkerson. Here in Philly, everyone wants to see what's going to happen with Fletcher Cox, who still has a year left on his deal. I would have to imagine the Eagles get something done with one of the most underrated players in the league in a Fletcher Cox, right, Booms?
Yeah, I like Fletcher Cox. He's been a thorn in the side of every team that he plays against. And, when And here it's all about Muhammad Wilkerson because it's New York. But overall, you ask any of the offensive linemen from either the Redskins or the Cowboys or even the Giants here, they'll tell you the guy is relentless. So, everything is pointing to that they will get a deal done with him. This is a weird thing because Josh Norman basically was released by Carolina in a stunning move. And I think the reason that probably happened is Gettleman, the GM down there in Carolina, pulled his New England Patriot cap and put it on and said, you know what? We're not dealing with this. If this guy wants to make these unrealistic demands and wants a contract in the neighborhood of $19 to $20 million a year, he ain't getting it. And I'm not giving it to him. Somebody else could be stupid enough to do that. And, there will be somebody who will pay Josh Norman an exorbitant amount of money. I think Josh Norman is a very talented player. He's not Deion Sanders. He's certainly, not Rod Woodson when Rod Woodson was back in the States with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think he's a quality player. I just don't think that, he's the best defensive back in football. I think a lot of that had to do with who the hell is in front of him and the pass rush that the Carolina Panthers would put forth. And when you see what a guy like Tony Ely, one of their defensive ends, did for them in the Super Bowl, and you look at his numbers, 3 sacks, an interception, a fumble recovery, a forced fumble, you realize that, Josh Norman may not even be the best player on his defense, especially one that includes Tom Davis and Luke Kuechly. So I think that was a bold stroke by Carolina, and I don't think that will happen in Philadelphia, with Fletcher Cox. And I know that the Jets are trying to trade Muhammad Wilkerson because if they don't, it's going to be very difficult for them to sign, their quarterback, Ryan Fitzpatrick, to the deal that he wants.
Now, let me ask you this, just as someone that's been around the league for a long time, knows what it takes to be successful in this league at an elite level. You have a situation with Johnny Manziel, and I met Johnny Manziel twice at the Heisman, and I was very impressed with him, and I think he does have a good skill set. But right now, he just doesn't understand it, and he has a serious problem. And if he doesn't get help and find a solution to this problem, something really bad is going to happen to him. So if I had to ask you, if you could sit down with Johnny Manziel for an hour and give him some advice, what would you tell the quarterback?
I would tell him 3 words: go to rehab and get your life in order. Really, I mean, the guy is completely off the rails. Nike fired him. His agent Drew Rosenhaus, who's about never going to fire anybody, especially if he sees a dollar sign at the end of it, realizes that Johnny Manziel needs help. Drew Rosenhaus made it all on himself somehow, but Johnny Manziel has done this to himself. He's hanging around with the wrong people. He's in the wrong crowd. You want to hang out in the rapper crowd, that's fine. Just you're not going to play football. I'm sorry. Because in order to play football in the NFL these days, you have to be so totally dedicated to your craft. If you want to sit your ass on the bench and make $1 million, that's fine. You can do that. But if you want to be Johnny Manziel that is going to wreck the league with the Cleveland Browns, you can't live your life the way he lived his life this day and age. This day and age, it's a 24/7, 365. You have to be all in with yourself before anything else. And right now, he's more concerned about going to Coachella and hanging out in L.A. and becoming maybe an extension of the Kardashians than he is becoming the next great quarterback. So I wouldn't touch him with anybody's team, and certainly until he gets his life straightened out, because his personality is such that it's too much work and it's too hard. And to win in the NFL, to have these kind of distractions, as the Cowboys found out with Greg Hardy last year, just basically, is nothing but a negative. And that's the last thing any team needs right now, especially coming off of all the stories that we're reading about him the last few months.
Last one with Boomer Esiason, who joins us right now, WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. So just real quickly, we mentioned Muhammad Wilkerson, Todd Bowles, Bruce Arians. Those are a lot of Temple guys. And as you know, I go to Temple University, and Temple sent 3 players to the Combine this year, which is something you usually don't see. Even Rod Streeter's also playing well in the NFL as well. And they have a serious player, Tyler Medikevich, who won the Defensive Player of the Year with the Bednarik and Nagurski Award. What do you hear about Temple football and how it's viewed in the NFL right now?
I don't really hear anything about Temple football, to be honest with you. But then again, I don't hear a lot about Maryland football either. So, it's kind of like part and parcel. Here's the deal. The one thing I think players are finding out nowadays is that you don't have to go to Alabama, Ohio State in order to be seen by scouts. They'll find you. And you got to find the right place for you. I often tell people the only reason I went to Maryland was because they were the only school that offered me a scholarship. And when I got there, I think I was 10th or 11th string on the depth chart. It took me 2.5 years before I ever took a snap in a legitimate game. There are a lot of reasons why if you go to a big school, you're not going to make it. And there are a lot of impediments in the way. It's highly competitive. It's ridiculous how they bring the players in and out these days in college football. That's why I always tell players that, a Temple University, a school like Miami of Ohio, Western Kentucky, those are not bad places to go and play, because if you are good enough, the only way that scouts are going to see you is if you find yourself on the field. And as Carson Wentz has proved this season, if you are good enough, they will find you. And it's not always about playing at, a big FBS school. It could be playing at a mid-major. It could be playing at a Division II or even a Division III school, in a sense that they will find you. So I'm glad for Temple. I'm happy for them. I'm happy for their players that appreciate the school that they went to, and hopefully they get back to the school, because to me that's a very important aspect of who somebody is. But as far as to really get delving into Temple football, Zach, I think I'll have to leave that to you.
Okay, sounds good. Boomer, thanks so much. We appreciate the time. This is a whole lot of fun.
All right, Zach. Good luck and happy graduation.